Thank you for joining our webinar, and I will turn the meeting over to your facilitator, Chris Abeel.
Thank you, Barbara. Welcome, everyone. There are a few people here that are new, so I'm going to take this from the beginning and starting with sort of what I do. And what I do is I bring credit union advocates to elected officials, try to get their attention, and communicate our concerns. Now, what I really do is I spend about half of my time explaining credit unions to elected officials, and I spend the other half explaining elected officials to credit unions. I am the league's registered lobbyist, and no, lobbyist is not a bad word. Think of me as your advocate, but in a court of a different jurisdiction. Today, I want to update you on the political landscape, review our legislative issues and priorities on Capitol Hill and here in New Jersey at the State House, let you know how you can help yourself, your family, your credit unions, volunteers, professionals, and members. And then answer any questions you may have about what I call the 3 Ps: policy, the politics, and the process. You can't achieve your public policy goals unless you're able to win on the policy, the politics, and the process. So, the political landscape. We all know that Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. Well, that seems a bit of an understatement these days. The 2016 election, Trump scored an upset in one of the nastiest campaigns in arguably more than a century. Clinton carried New Jersey by a 47% margin. So Trump did pretty well in a blue state like New Jersey. We also lost 7-term Congressman Scott Garrett. He lost to Democratic challenger Josh Gottheimer. And that was a loss, as we'll talk later, because of Garrett's assignment on the Financial Services Committee. The GOP won control of both houses of Congress, and we have today the most pro-business government in recent memory. This offers unparalleled opportunity for regulatory relief. But the nation and Congress remain sharply divided. Hyper-partisanship continues with no sign of letting up, and there's continued gridlock is very possible on Capitol Hill. We witnessed last week one of the cabinet confirmations, the Secretary of Education. The Vice President had to break a tie vote. I can't tell you the last time that happened. So there is sharp division. New Jersey, as I mentioned before, lost a House Financial Services Committee member and subcommittee chair when Scott Garrett lost. That's, I guess, the bad news. The good news is 2nd-term Congressman Tom MacArthur from the 3rd District and freshman Josh Gottheimer, who beat Scott Garrett, have both been named to the Financial Services Committee. We met with Josh Gottheimer a few weeks ago. He's up to speed on credit union issues, and we believe that he will prove an ally on Capitol Hill, perhaps a stronger ally than Scott Garrett. 2nd-term Congressman Tom MacArthur, when he ran 2 years ago, excuse me, this was a hotly contested race. We interviewed both candidates, and we decided to throw our support behind MacArthur. And we did so providing the maximum allowable PAC support. And one of his first official acts when he got to Washington was to put in a bill that would exempt loans to veterans and active duty service people from the MBL cap. So he's already proved a credit union supporter. We actually are meeting with him next week in his district office in Toms River. Going down the rest of the delegation, Bill Pascrell, a longtime credit union supporter and vocal supporter of the tax exemption, retained his seat on the Ways and Means Committee and as well as the Budget Committee. Ways and Means is important because, as some of you know, that's the committee where all tax legislation is written. And Pasquale more than once has come out publicly in favor of the credit union tax treatment. He also won a spot on the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, where he joined Frank Pallone. This is a very powerful political, not legislative committee, but one that helps set the agenda. So his influence on Capitol Hill increased with this new session. Frank Pallone, Democrat from the 6th District, is now the ranking member on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. This positions him to become chair should the Democrats retake the House. And that's important because a fair amount of financial services legislation also finds its way to the Energy and Commerce Committee. As I mentioned earlier, Pallone is on the Policy and Steering Committee, so he retained that seat. Rodney Frelinghuysen from the 11th District was named Appropriations Committee chair. That's key for a number of reasons, not the least of which part of our agenda, which I'll address later, is to bring the CFPB under the appropriations process. Senator Menendez will continue serving on the Senate Banking Committee, and Senator Cory Booker won a seat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Some see this as a first step toward a 2020 presidential bid. Long and the short of it is, the New Jersey delegation has some heavy hitters, and our state's influence is growing on Capitol Hill. Coming back to New Jersey, 2000 is a major election year here. Governor is up, and all 120 legislative seats are up. Christie cannot succeed himself for a third consecutive term, and so there's going to be a race to succeed him. Some credit union supporters are not seeking re-election. Senators Diane Allen, Joe Kyrillos, Ray Lesniak, who's running for governor, Kevin O'Toole, and Jim Whalen have all decided to retire. This is a loss for us. However, we still have a number of supporters in key places. The race for the Democratic nomination for governor. The front runner is a retired investment banker and former U.S. ambassador, Philip Murphy. Also running for the Democratic nod is State Senator Ray Lesniak and Assemblyman John Wisniewski. Lesniak is the longest serving legislator in the state. And Murphy cleared the field of those thought to be the strongest contenders. But there is some concern over electing another Goldman Sachs billionaire. John Corzine is still in recent memory, and a lot of the Democrats are worried that will, another Goldman Sachs guy will be a detriment. There are a few other minor contenders, but right now it's between Murphy, Lesniak, and Wisniewski. My guess is it's not as close a race, which we will see in a second, but Murphy is clearly the front runner. On the Republican side, the front runner now is Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, and Assemblyman Jack Citarelli has entered the race. He could prove a strong challenger. He also has a health issue right now, which he's contending with. And then the wild card here is comedian Joe Piscopo. He has been considering entering the race, and the question is, A, does he enter the race, and B, does he enter as a Republican or an independent? In order to enter as a Republican, he has to file by April 3rd, or if he runs as an independent, he has to file by June 6th. On the GOP side, there are a few other minor contenders as well. There's a Nutley town commissioner, there's another activist. On both sides of the aisle, people see sort of the Trump phenomenon, and they say, okay, I'm going to try to ride this wave and ride the wave against anybody who's an insider. There was a Fairleigh Dickinson University Public Mind poll released this past Thursday. The front runner leads are marginal at this point. Murphy has 17% of the primary voters, Democratic primary voters. Lesniak comes in at 7. Wisniewski comes in at 6. On the GOP side, Guadagno has 18. Piscopo, who's not even an announced candidate, comes in with 12, and Citarelli follows far behind with 2. That's only part of the story, though, because 52% of the Democrats don't know who they like, and 17% of them say they prefer someone else. 50% of the Republicans don't know who they like. 13% said they preferred somebody else. The race is anything but locked up, but given the registration edge and Christie's poor approval ratings, 2017 is the Dems to lose. Now, one of the key things here, which sort of was taken or appeared to be taken off the table a couple of months ago, was whether or not Christie would finish his term. He didn't end up with a spot in the Trump administration, and so he has been pretty vocal about saying he's going to serve out the rest of his term. If he does that, Kim Guadagno starts at sort of the same place that the Democratic nominee does. But if he leaves, she becomes the governor, and she has the power of the incumbent. Just yesterday, Christie and his wife had lunch at the White House with Trump. There's some speculation that there may be a job, announced for him. He's saying no, he is going to stay through the term, but that's all part of the political theater that goes on. They didn't go down and have lunch with the president for Valentine's Day, I can assure you of that. So who knows what will happen and whether or not Kim Guadagno will end up running as an incumbent. Regardless of what happens at the top of the ticket, the Dems almost certainly will retain control of both the Assembly and the state Senate. But we are strongly positioned with existing leadership and others thought to be positioned to move up. There could be, two examples. One is Senate President Steve Sweeney, who thought about making a run for governor, backed off the race, and now says he's committed to remaining as the Senate president. He is a very strong ally of credit unions. He was the sponsor of our municipal deposits legislation, and he has seen to it that our other bills that we've initiated have gone through. So he would have made a great governor, in my opinion, and that's coming from a Republican. But he's very valuable to us as the Senate president as well. There may be a change in the speakership, and one of the stronger contenders for that, if there is a change, is Craig Coughlin. Craig is currently the chairman of the Assembly Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee. He's a good friend personally, and he's a good friend to credit unions, having sponsored some of our bills since he's been there. So I think we're positioned. Gary Scher also is another individual that could become speaker. And of course, the current speaker, Vinny Prieto, is a credit union supporter. So I think we're in good shape on the legislative side, even though we are losing some allies. So I love this. This is an old postcard. That's the State House back in the 20s, maybe the 30s. But anyway, state legislative priorities. First and foremost right now is electronic lien entitling, or ELT. Our legislation, we've been working on ELT for, has to be 6 years now. We've tried to do it administratively. We believe that the MVC was working with us in good faith, but it became apparent that we were getting the runaround and that our project kept falling to the bottom of the list to other projects. So we had legislation introduced that would give the Motor Vehicle Commission 60 days to determine if they can implement ELT within 1 year. Otherwise, they have to outsource it and have it up and running within 1 year. Our bill passed the Assembly Transportation Committee last month, and it was also introduced in the Senate. One of the things that the governor mentioned when he said he was going to, come back and his focus would be on New Jersey, he did say he was going to try to work to improve the customer service at the motor vehicle agencies. Well, as soon as we heard that, we asked to meet with his policy staff to discuss ELT. We did that, and interestingly enough, when the bill was in the Assembly Transportation Committee, it passed unanimously with the exception of one Republican. And we found that that one Republican that the Republicans were asked to vote against the bill, and that came from the MBC, and I believe that that may signal some issues in the governor's office. But we feel that it's a strong enough issue from the politics and the policy standpoint that if we get a bill to the governor's desk, that he will have to sign it. Another bill we're working on is interchange. This would be a state bill or a state interchange law. It would regulate interchange fees on transactions in New Jersey, and it would allow merchants to select various networks to process those transactions. We killed it in the previous session, but the retailer and fuel merchants associations are pushing it harder than ever this session. We've been working with Visa, MasterCard, the Bankers and Casinos Associations, as well as the Electronics Payment Coalition to defeat the bill. We have a targeted grassroots campaign underway, and we're hoping to prevent that bill from getting out of committee. But it is going to be a heavy lift, and we could see a major battle potentially in the future. Kill switch or remote shut-off device legislation. This was originally introduced as a prohibition. And let me back up and say what this does. Let's say you've got a subprime auto loan and the credit's really impaired. There are some lenders that put what's called a remote shut-off device on the car. And that allows the lender, if the borrower, the loan becomes too far in arrears, too far overdue, it allows the lender, rather than have to go out and tow the car in, to shut the car off. Well, not really shut the car off, but prevent the car from being started again. It disables the car. There were some horror stories about, oh, well, somebody's driving down a highway and all of a sudden, their car shuts down because they're 2 days late on a car payment. Well, those stories were exaggerations, they were anecdotal, and we were able to go into the sponsors and demonstrate that and change the bill from an outright ban to what we hope would be reasonable regulation. Some of the reasonable regulation was the amount of notice they got, the kind of disclosure, the ability to turn the car back on for a 24 or 48-hour period in case of an emergency. A few things like that were all very reasonable and actually were being practiced at that point anyway. So we got the bill amended, but there were two sticking points to it. One was an interest rate cap, and the other was a prohibition from lenders charging for the installation of the device. The interest rate cap, in a sense, really didn't impact us today because we're under an NCUA interest rate cap. But we were opposed to the precedent of the state setting an interest rate cap beyond the general usury cap. So we tried to work with the sponsors on these two aspects, tried to demonstrate that they were only going to harm and limit people who really needed this type of financing. but we were unable to secure the final 2 changes. So we communicated our opposition to the governor's policy staff. And on Friday, he issued what's called a conditional veto. And the conditional veto, he changed it, made a few technical corrections. He vetoed the interest rate cap, but allowed the prohibition on charging a fee for the device. The thinking being, once the car loan is done, the lender gets the device back, and somewhere his policy people found a best practices that suggested that was fine. So now the bill has to go back, and both houses of the legislature have to concur with his new language, and then in order for it to become law. We understand unofficially today that the Assembly will in fact validate that conditional veto, and then it'll go to the Senate. It's not turning off. Excuse me. Okay. Another item we're working on is the data security bill. That limits the information a retailer may retain after the point of sale. It authorized issuers to identify the breaching entity. It provides for recovery of associated costs from a breach. It passed the Assembly Financial Institutions Committee last May, and it was put on the board list, but the retailers and fuel merchants associations got it held. This is actually the first bill that I was able to get introduced on behalf of the league when I first got here about 10 years ago. Well, I guess it was 9 years ago when the bill was introduced. We've kept pushing it. The sponsor in the Assembly is the Assembly Speaker, and he, I think, agrees with us, but so we won the policy aspect. I think he's a little bit concerned about the political aspects of it. And so we'll work this as long as we can, but we're not going to spend a lot of capital on it at the risk of losing some other goals that are more achievable. There was a Superstorm Sandy foreclosure amendment. This would provide an extension to the existing law's foreclosure forbearance provisions. And basically what it does is it says if a homeowner suffers delays in getting their home repaired based on issues of the governmental assistance programs not running as smoothly as they should, that they'd be entitled to have they'd be entitled to a forbearance period on their mortgage. Put the mortgage in forbearance, take the interest and all other payments and put them at the back end of the mortgage. We oppose this because it increases our exposure through the problems of government that are out of our control. I will say this, we did survey our credit unions, and I went through actually the entire registry of outstanding foreclosures in the state. I didn't look at each one individually, but I did searches by credit union, FCU, CU, and every sort of iteration I could. And I found between that and the survey that we had little or no exposure, but we continued to oppose it as a bad precedent. The governor signed the bill, but conditioned implementation. He took a step that I've never seen before, but he basically said, I'm signing this legislation, but it makes no sense. It probably violates the state constitution and federal law, and I'm going to direct state government not to enforce it. I didn't say, that's not a direct quote, but that's the net effect of it. And so we're reasonably certain that as a practical matter, this legislation will have no impact. Last legislative session, we worked to get through enabling legislation that would allow financial institutions to offer what are called prize-linked savings accounts. We got the bill signed into law a year ago this past January. It had a 6-month delay to allow the Division of Banking to write up implementation rules. They have been dragging their feet, and we have been leaning on them as hard as we can. They've failed to meet the statutory deadline, and they failed to comply with what's called Executive Order 2, which has to do with streamlining the regulatory process and rulemaking process. We had the Senate sponsor send a letter 2 weeks ago to the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance, and we are contacting the Lieutenant Governor. We have been assured that the process is now going to move ahead as quickly as possible, but we're not going to let up the pressure because we've been told this before. The net is that I think credit unions will be able to offer these accounts by the second half, by June anyway. I'm hopeful that it might be sooner, but I'm going to say conservatively by June. And I guess Barbara has me doing something to poll, and so I'm going to launch a poll and ask our participants to say whether or not they intend to use, oh, this is the kill switch. I'm sorry, I'm new to this. Wrong question. If we go back to the kill switch, do you know whether or not your credit union uses a kill switch? If so, let us know, and if you don't know, let us know. Okay, so we have 3 people saying or 4 people saying no, 2 people saying they don't know. When we surveyed credit unions, we actually only found 1 that was currently using them. But I do think it's an opportunity. I guess 5 say no now. It is something that a credit union may want to use or consider using in the future. So let me see if I can pull up the next poll. End polling. Okay. And I'm sharing the results. All right, so I'm supposed to have another poll here on prize-linked accounts. Well, we may have to come back to that. Congressional legislative priorities. Things are stormy on Capitol Hill. Number 1 congressional priority is our campaign, or CUNA's campaign for common sense regulation. And essentially, that is being launched or has been launched to broaden and clarify the credit union CFPB exemption, to change the CFPB structure to a 5-person board, fund the CFPB through the appropriations process. You recall I mentioned that's one of the reasons why Rodney Frelinghuysen is so important. Currently, there's no congressional oversight over the CFPB. They get their money from the Federal Reserve. If they were subject to the appropriations process, then there would be stronger congressional oversight. And we want to stop the payday, arbitration, debt collection, and overdraft rules, and fix the HMDA, TILA, RESPA, and remittances rules. The Campaign for Common Sense Regulation is a multi-phase plan to reach voters, engage and energize the credit union system. We want to mobilize credit union advocates to send messages to Congress and the executive branch. And we do this all the time. We do this through calls to action. But we want to do this in a much bigger way. We want to get consumers to deliver the messages as well. We want to take it from beyond the volunteers and the professionals and bring it out to the members. And we want to empower advocates at all levels to engage in a broader debate over financial regulatory reform. So how can you and your credit union help? One is by participating in CUNA's Member Activation or MAP program. 2 is updating your project zip code numbers. And 3 is supporting QLAC. QLAC is very important. We have supporters out there who take their hits from the bankers, and we need to provide them support so that they can win re-election. QLAC is, I think, the 6th largest PAC in the country, but if you take the bankers PAC, the bankers themselves, and then all the various bankers PACs, and then all the various deep pockets of bankers, we have trouble keeping up. We did, I think, about 5 million this last cycle. We did, I think it was 45,000 in New Jersey. New Jersey is a recipient state, meaning that candidates for the congressional delegation in New Jersey, their campaigns, receive more money than we raise. We're getting better, but we're still not pulling our weight. And this is a cooperative effort, so we need to pull our weight. And then we ask people to participate in Hike the Hill and in-district meetings with lawmakers. We know everybody can't get to Washington for the GAC. They can't get to Washington for New Jersey Day at Credit Union House. But we have set a goal this year to meet with all members, all 12 members of the House delegation in their district. And we're in February. We have number 2 on the list. I think next we're going to shoot to meet with Rodney Frelinghuysen. But when we have those meetings, we'll go out to you, and we hope that you'll take time to participate. We've had several credit unions who have participated in the MAP program. I think it's worked well. Early on, there may have been 1 or 2 snafus, but they've got those kinks worked out. The data shows that some credit unions are uncomfortable going out to their members because they feel like they're invading their privacy, or they're concerned about member relations. Well, CUNA's data show that those credit unions that use the MAP program begin to get a deeper wallet share. They have stronger penetration. The members who engage through the MAP program become closer to their credit union and have a vested interest in the success. So, and if anybody has questions about that, I can get the data to them. So, questions. If you don't know who this is, it is not the president's press secretary, but it's Melissa McCarthy, who does a great impression. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go to YouTube and look it up. So any questions? Let's see. I have one. Republican governor vetoed. How, if a Dem gets elected, will the bill pass next year? Which bill, Tracy? Can we bump Tracy up to Barbara to be able to speak?
Certainly, Chris, hold on a second. Chris, somewhere along the way, I became a panelist and not a co-host, so I need you to do that. So if you go under viewers and you hover over Tracy and you hover over the more button, you can promote her to panelist.
It only allows me to remove her.
No. And you're the host. Why are you not able to do that?
Oh, wait, promote the panelist.
There you go.
It's right there. All right, Tracy, I think you can speak now. Hang on, wait a minute.
Oh, you have to unmute her.
Tracy,
Yes,
your question.
this was on the kill switch.
Yes.
Right now, we have a Republican governor who would veto it, but if a Democrat gets into office next year, do you think the kill switch would go through as not occurring? Because like I told you, I'm thinking about getting it, but I'm not investing all this money if it's going to die in the assembly.
Yeah, my guess is that, well, the short answer is, I think we've made a strong enough case with the sponsors that it will be a regulation rather than a prohibition.
Okay.
I feel pretty confident in that. I also feel pretty confident that both houses of the legislature are likely to concur with the conditional veto. So I think we'll have an answer to your question probably in the next month or two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Chris, you can remove her from being a panelist, which will put her back as a viewer.
I'm removing her as a panelist, not from the thing.
Right, not from the meeting.
Okay.
And I just posted the YouTube link to the video that we're looking at, the screenshot. So anybody who wants to go into the chat feed, they can find the YouTube video and watch it at their leisure.
Oh, this is great. We're promoting this. Let's see. Any other questions? Let's see. Wait a minute. No, just Tracy?
I'm still a panelist, I think.
Yeah, I didn't want, let's see. Oh, I know what I have to do that.
Yeah, also at this point, Chris, you can go ahead and hit the button to stop the recording. And anybody else who's asking questions either live or through the question and answer tab, that is not going to be part of the recording. So even Tracy, the question you answered, we do have the editing ability, you know, at the conclusion of the webinar to stop and read out questions if we need to.
Where do I stop the,
I don't know. We'll stop it after.
okay.
We'll fix it later. I'm going back on mute.
Any more questions? Going once? Going twice? Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Sorry. Getting new with this technology. Oh, let's see, David. With all the turmoil in Washington, when do you think Dodd-Frank reform will start to move forward? That's a good question. I think we're probably looking at somewhere in the second quarter to third quarter. And any other questions? Oh, Barbara, I was trying to do that other poll,
Yes, Chris.
the prize linked accounts poll.
It's in there.
It's in there. Where do I find it?
Would you like me to join you?
Sure.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Bear with us. Barbara's on her way.
stop sharing that results. And then you go to polling question number
okay.
2 and then launch the poll.
Okay, so I'm launching polling question number 2, and that is, does your credit union plan to offer prize-linked savings accounts in the future? Okay, it looks like 5 are saying no, and 2 are saying they don't know, and 1 is saying yes. Well, I know of at least one other, well, I know of 2 other credit unions that aren't on this call that fully intend to launch the program. So, all right. Any other questions? Well, thank you. We'll be doing this on a regular basis, and we look forward to doing it again. And we look forward to those attending GAC. We'll see you in Washington the week after next. Thank you.
Chris, you can click end meeting for all and we will be done.
Thank you.